My husband died and left me one thing in his will, a key to a safety deposit box I never knew existed. My daughter and her husband smirked at me as the lawyer handed them the deeds to the vineyard, the estate, and the bank accounts. I stood there in my simple black dress, the hollow echo of their greed the only sound in the room. The key felt like ice in my palm, a tiny metallic betrayal. If my story touches you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, subscribe to the channel. Stay with me. There are more truths like mine to be told. But to understand the depth of the frost that settled in my heart that day, I have to take you back to the beginning, to the soil and the sun, and the man who was my whole world. Jonathan Sterling died on a perfect spring morning, the kind he loved most, when the light slants through the vines and makes the dewy grapes look like a million scattered amethysts. He was checking the irrigation lines in the South Block, his favorite Cabernet plot. Miguel, the foreman who'd been with us for 30 years, found him. He said Jonathan looked peaceful, lying on his back in the rich, dark earth, as if he'd simply decided to take a nap under the wide California sky. A massive aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye, just the earth claiming back one of its most devoted stewards. Our daughter, Chloe, was on a plane back from a buying trip in Bordeaux when it happened. I had to make the calls, arrange the impossible, hold the world together while my own shattered into dust-fine pieces. I was the one who sat in the funeral home choosing the casket. Solid oak, simple. He would have hated anything showy, while fielding calls from distributors and journalists. Jonathan Sterling, the visionary behind Sterling Vineyards, was gone. And I, Eliza Sterling, was now the ghost in the machine. The funeral was a spectacle. 200 people crowded under a white tent on the lawn, the very lawn where we'd held Chloe's wedding reception 5 years earlier. Important people with firm handshakes and somber expressions offered condolences that felt like formalities. They spoke of his brilliance, his palate, his legacy. No one spoke of the man who sang off-key in the shower, who always burned the toast, and held my hand under the table at every intimidating business dinner for 42 years. Chloe, my only child, stood beside her husband, Adrian. She was impeccable in a tailored black suit, her blonde hair a perfect sheet. Her eyes were dry, her posture board straight. Adrian's hand was on the small of her back, a possessive, steadying gesture. They looked like royalty in mourning, already assuming the mantle. I stood alone on the other side of the casket, feeling the fissure between us as a physical chasm, the mother, the widow, the relic. 3 days after we buried him, we gathered in the oak-paneled study of the main house for the reading of the will. Mr. Henderson, Jonathan's lawyer for 40 years, looked older and sadder than I remembered. Chloe and Adrian sat on the Chesterfield sofa, a united front. I took the wingback chair by the cold fireplace. The document was straightforward, brutal in its clarity. To my daughter, Chloe Sterling Wright, I bequeath my entire ownership stake in Sterling Vineyards Incorporated, including all associated trademarks, physical assets, and business accounts, to be held and managed jointly with her husband, Adrian Wright. To my wife, Eliza Sterling, I bequeath the contents of safety deposit box number 714 at First Pacific Trust Bank in St. Helena, access to which is granted by the key held herein. Silence. Then Adrian let out a soft, disbelieving chuckle. Chloe's head snapped toward him, then back to Mr. Henderson. That's it? The vineyard is mine? Ours? The corporate entity, yes, Mr. Henderson confirmed, his voice weary. And for my mother, a safety deposit box? Chloe's voice was sharp, laced with a confusion that quickly curdled into something else. What's in it? I do not have an inventory, Chloe. The box is in her name only. Your father rented it over 20 years ago. My instructions were simply to convey the key upon his death. Adrian leaned forward, his handsome face a mask of pragmatic concern. It's probably sentimental items, sweetheart. Old letters, photos. The important thing is the business is secure. Your father wanted it to stay in the family, to grow. He said family, but his eyes, when they flicked to me, said the future. My future was a metal box in the bank vault. But the house, the estate? Chloe asked, a hint of panic breaking through. The main house and the 5 surrounding acres are part of the Vineyard's asset portfolio. They are included in the bequest. I felt the air leave the room. Not just the business, but my home. The home I designed with Jonathan, room by room, garden by garden. The kitchen where I'd taught Chloe to bake. The porch where we'd spent countless evenings watching the sun set over the rows of vines. It wasn't mine. It was part of the portfolio. Mom can stay, of course, Chloe said quickly, turning to me. Her expression was a messy blend of triumph, guilt, and newly acquired authority. For now, it's far too big for you alone anyway. We'll need to figure out a long-term arrangement. Her words were a gentle shove toward a door I didn't even see. For now, an arrangement. Mr. Henderson handed me a small numbered key. It was heavier than it looked. The box is at the main branch. You'll need this and your ID. I closed my fingers around it. The metal teeth bit into my palm. This was my inheritance. A mystery? A placeholder? A box? Well, Adrian said, standing and clapping his hands together once. The sound was jarring. We have a lot to get our arms around. The transition, the board. Chloe, we should meet with the operations team first thing tomorrow. And just like that, the meeting was over. My role was concluded. Chloe came over and kissed my cheek. Her perfume, something new and expensive, smelled foreign. We'll talk later, Mom. Don't look so sad. Dad obviously wanted me to carry on his work. It's a tribute. A tribute that left me homeless. A tribute that felt like a dismissal. I went to the bank the next morning. The vault was cold and silent. A cathedral of money and secrets. The attendant led me to a wall of identical bronze doors, found number 714, and used his key alongside mine. The box slid out, a long, slender rectangle of cold steel. He left me in a private room with it. My heart hammered against my ribs. What could be so important, yet worth nothing, on a balance sheet? I lifted the lid. Inside there was no stack of bonds, no jewelry, just a single sealed manila envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. A letter in Jonathan's familiar sprawling script lay on top of a smaller, sealed envelope and a slim black USB drive. My dearest Eliza, if you're reading this, I've gone and left you to deal with the mess. I'm sorry, my love, for this and for what's to come. First, you must know this. The will presented to you is not my true last will and testament. It is a document created 2 years ago under significant pressure. The true will, drafted and notarized 6 months ago, is with a separate attorney. Her name and instructions are on the USB drive. The password is our song, the one from the dive bar in '79, all lowercase, no spaces. I have left the Vineyard to Chloe in the false will because she and Adrian believe it is their right. They have made it clear in ways I cannot commit to paper that they would contest anything less. They see it as an asset to be leveraged. You and I know it is a living thing, a legacy of dirt and sun and love. I cannot let them gut it, so I am giving them the hollow shell. The true legacy, Eliza, is yours. I have spent the last 10 years quietly acquiring the land that surrounds Sterling, the old Thompson parcel, the hillside to the west, the valley floor to the east, over 300 acres in total. They are held in a separate trust in your name alone. The deeds, the soil analyses, the water rights, everything is on the drive. This land is the future of Sterling, the heart. It is unencumbered, debt-free, and utterly unknown to Chloe and Adrian. The final, most important part of my plan requires your courage. On the day Chloe turns 35, which is 5 months from now, the true will is to be unveiled. There is a clause. If she and Adrian are running the original Vineyard Corporation profitably and with integrity, as judged by an independent panel named in the true will, they will be given the chance to lease the new land from your trust at a fair rate.
If not, the land remains solely yours, to do with as you wish. Sell it, keep it, plant it with wildflowers. I have forced you into a performance, my love. For the next 5 months, you must be the discarded widow. You must let them believe they have won. It will be cruel. It will be the hardest thing I have ever asked of you. But you have always been the strongest person I know. You buried your own dreams to help mine grow. Now it is your turn. Grow something for yourself.
Watch them. The land is the proof. The truth is in the dirt. All my love, forever. Jonathan. P.S. The smaller envelope is for you to open on a day when you feel truly alone. It is a reminder. I read the letter twice, 3 times. The words swam, then solidified into a terrifying, exhilarating reality. Jonathan hadn't abandoned me. He had enlisted me. The humiliation was a tactic. The key wasn't to a box of trinkets. It was to a secret war. I drove back to the estate in a daze. Chloe's car, a new sleek SUV, was parked prominently in the circular drive. She was in Jonathan's study, already sitting behind his massive walnut desk, talking on the phone. Yes, we're absolutely reviewing all supplier contracts. We need to tighten up margins across the board. She saw me hover in the doorway and covered the receiver. Mom, can this wait? I'm in the middle of something. I just wondered about my things in the house. She waved a dismissive hand. Of course, everything's the same, for now. But Adrian and I were thinking, the East Ming would make a stunning corporate guest suite. We'll help you move your personal effects to the smaller bedroom suite over the garage. It's really quite cozy. The bedroom over the garage. The guest quarters. My relegation was beginning, and it was happening with a brisk corporate efficiency. That night, hidden in the laundry room with an old laptop, I inserted the USB drive. I typed the password, brown-eyed girl. The drive contained a digital trove, folders labeled deeds, trust documents, soil reports, water rights. I opened the deed for the Thompson parcel. There it was, clear as day. Grantor Jonathan A. Sterling. Grantee, the Eliza Sterling Heritage Trust. Dated 10/15/2014. Consideration $1,850,000. A specific date, a specific price. Concrete proof, just as Jonathan promised. There was a video file, too. I clicked it. Jonathan appeared, sitting at his desk in the study. He looked tired, but his eyes were fierce. Hello, my love. If you're seeing this, the plan is in motion. Remember, watch the land. They will show you who they are. Trust what you see, not what they say. And Eliza, plant something soon. It will give you hope. The video ended. The next morning, I went to the tool shed. I took a trowel, a bag of compost, and a single dormant grapevine cutting from a rare heritage Zinfandel clone Jonathan had been nurturing. I walked for 20 minutes, to the very edge of the western hillside, my hillside, according to the deeds. I found a sunny spot, dug a deep hole, mixed in the compost, and planted the cutting. It was a tiny, seemingly futile act, a stick in the ground, but as I patted the soil around it, I felt a surge of strength. It was a small, secret act of rebellion, a claim. My first turn, my first moment of regaining control. Life became a performance in quiet agony. Adria moved into the operations office at the winery. I heard through the staff grapevine that his first act was to order an audit of all non-essential personnel. Miguel, the foreman, came to me one evening, his hat in his hands. Senora Elisa, they are talking of bringing in machines to replace the hand harvesting in the old blocks. They say it is inefficient. The old blocks were where our most delicate, expensive Pinot Noir grew. Machines would bruise the grapes, crush the quality. They can't, I whispered, heartbroken. They say it is their decision now, he said, his eyes sad. Chloe's transformation was the most chilling. She began to dress like a caricature of a CEO, in severe suits and stilettos utterly impractical for a vineyard.
She started referring to the wine as the product, the vineyard workers as labor units. One evening, over a tense dinner in the formal dining room, she'd insisted we start using it to uphold the brand's image. I made a hesitant comment about the upcoming bud break. "Mother, please leave the agronomy to the professionals we're hiring. You're here as a courtesy. Don't confuse sentiment with strategy." The word courtesy hung in the air, colder than the Chardonnay in my glass. Adrian smirked, cutting into his steak. A month after the funeral, the first major clash happened. I was in the garden when I saw a strange truck near the old oak tree at the property's highest point, Jonathan's favorite thinking spot. I walked up to find two men with a surveying tripod. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Just marking out the lines for the new villa," he said cheerfully. "Villa?" "Yeah, the owners are putting in a luxury guest villa right here. View is killer." My blood ran cold. I found Chloe in the tasting room going over floor plans with an architect. "You're building on the oak knoll?" She sighed, exasperated. "Mom, it's the most valuable undeveloped parcel on the estate. Adrian has a contact at a luxury hospitality group. A 6-suite villa for high-net-worth clients will quadruple the revenue from this space." "That's Jonathan's spot. It's sacred." She laughed short, sharp. "Sacred. It's dirt and a tree. Dad's sentimentality is what kept margins so lean. We're modernizing. If you can't be supportive, at least be quiet." I stood there, gutted. That night, I opened the small envelope Jonathan had left. It contained a single faded photograph. Us, in our 20s, covered in mud, standing in the rain beside our first leased half-acre of vines. We were laughing, arms around each other, looking at the scraggly plants as if they were the most beautiful things in the world. On the back, he'd written, "We started with nothing but this. Remember your strength." The photo became my talisman. I carried it in my pocket. The relocation came 6 weeks later. Adrian framed it as a kindness. "Eliza, the renovation on the East Wing starts next week. The noise, the dust, it'll be awful for you. We've had the apartment above the garage completely redone. It's lovely, all one level, very manageable." It was a 3-room box. A bedroom, a sitting area, a kitchenette. A window looked out onto the concrete turnaround, not the vines. My beautiful, sun-drenched studio in the main house, with its north light perfect for painting, a hobby I'd abandoned decades ago, was to become a creative conference space. I moved my few allowed belongings, personal clothes, some books, the family photos Chloe didn't want for decor, in a single afternoon. As I carried a box of my own sketches from my pre-Jonathan life when I dreamed of being an artist, I passed Adrian in the hall. He glanced at the dusty portfolio. "Shutting the old skin, huh?" he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Sometimes a clean break is the kindest thing for everyone. The cruelty was so casual, so woven into the fabric of their new authority. I said nothing. I was playing my part, the discarded widow. From my new perch over the garage, I watched their modernization. The casual family-style lunches for the staff were canceled to reduce frivolous expense. Miguel was forced into early retirement. They said he was resistant to new methodologies. I saw him drive away, his shoulders slumped, after 30 years of devotion. That night, I wept for him, for Jonathan, for the soul of the place being stripped away. I started taking long walks on my land, the secret 300 acres. I had the deeds and surveys on my phone. I would stand on the western hillside, looking down at the original Sterling Vineyard, now buzzing with unfamiliar consultants and loud machinery. I'd check on my singles infidel cutting. It had sprouted tiny, brave green leaves. My financial situation tightened. Chloe and Adrian controlled all the accounts. I was given a monthly stipend for personal necessities. It was barely enough for groceries and my medications. I began selling things quietly online. A piece of jewelry Jonathan had given me for our 30th anniversary, a small, valuable painting from my own inherited collection. It was humiliating, but it gave me a sense of agency, a tiny, secret reservoir of funds they knew nothing about. 4 months after Jonathan's death, the crisis point arrived. I overheard Adrian on the phone on the patio below my window. The loan is secured against the entire original property, including the main house. Yes, the expansion into the Napa sparkling market is aggressive, but you have to spend money to make money. The land is the equity. He was mortgaging my home, Jonathan's life's work, to fund a risky venture. A venture that, if the true will's conditions were applied, would likely be seen as the opposite of profitable, integrity-run operations. I knew I had to contact the lawyer. It was time. Using the computer at the public library, I accessed the USB drive files and found the contact, Eleanor Vance, attorney at law in San Francisco. I used a payphone to call. Her voice was warm, steady, immediate. "Eliza, I've been expecting your call. Jonathan spoke of you with such profound respect. Are you ready?" "They're mortgaging everything," I said, my voice shaking. "I know. We've been monitoring. The trust land is secure, completely separate. You've done beautifully, Eliza. The performance is almost over. The true will is scheduled to be presented the day after Chloe's birthday, at a meeting at my offices. Can you be strong a little while longer?" "I don't know," I said, my voice adrift. "Look at your cutting on the hillside," she said gently, as if Jonathan had told her about it. It was. Against all odds, it was thriving. Chloe's 35th birthday arrived. They threw a massive party at the winery. It was a who's who of the new wine elite, loud and glittering. I was invited, of course, as a guest. I wore a simple dress and stood at the periphery, watching my daughter hold court, Adrian beaming beside her. They announced the Sterling Sparkling venture to great applause. I slipped away early, back to my quiet apartment, the sounds of celebration a distant mockery. The meeting at Eleanor Vance's office was set for 10 a.m. 2 days later. I took the bus to San Francisco, a surreal journey from my isolated valley into the gleaming city. Eleanor's office was in a historic building, all quiet dignity. She was a woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. She said, "They're already here. They believe this is about finalizing some minor tax trusts related to the estate. They have no idea." We walked into a conference room. Chloe and Adrian were there, dressed in conquering hero chic. They looked surprised, then annoyed to see me. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Chloe asked. "Ms. Vance, I wasn't informed my mother would be part of this." "She is the guest of honor," Eleanor said calmly, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Please, sit, Eliza." I sat, placing my worn purse on the table. Inside was the faded photograph. Eleanor began, "Thank you for coming. Today we are here to execute the final provisions of Jonathan Sterling's estate." She slid a thick document across to Chloe. "This is his last true will and testament, dated and notarized 6 months prior to his passing. It revokes all previous versions." Adrian snatched it up, his eyes scanning. I watched the color drain from his face first, then Chloe's. Her expression moved from confusion to disbelief to white-hot rage. This is fraud," Adrian sputtered. "He was unwell. He was manipulated." His finger stabbed at the document. This Eliza Sterling Heritage Trust, 300 acres. What the hell is this? And these conditions?" Chloe turned to me, her eyes blazing. You did this. You twisted an old man's mind in his final days." Her venom was physical, but I felt a strange calm, the calm Jonathan had promised would come. "He was perfectly sound mind, Chloe," Eleanor stated, verified by 3 separate evaluations, all included in the appendix. "The trust land was acquired over 10 years. The deeds are irrefutable. She pushed another file toward them. Satellite imagery, purchase records, soil logs. It is entirely separate from the Sterling Vineyards Corporation you inherited. So, what does this mean? Chloe demanded, her voice shrill.
It means, Eleanor said, that the land surrounding your vineyard, the land you likely had plans for, is your mother's, free and clear. According to the will, you have been running the original Vineyard Corporation for a 5-month probationary period. An independent panel, pre-selected by Jonathan and whose names are in this envelope, she tapped a sealed packet, will now review your management. If they find it has been profitable and conducted with integrity, meaning respecting the land, the staff, the legacy, you will be offered a long-term lease on your mother's land at fair market value. If not, the land remains hers unconditionally. Profitable? We've just taken out a major loan for expansion, Adrian shouted. A loan secured against assets you now hold, Eleanor noted. Your business decisions are yours. The panel will judge their wisdom and their ethics. They will interview Miguel Rodriguez. They will review the cancellation of staff benefits. They will look at the plans to build on the Oak Knoll. Chloe was silent, staring at me as if seeing a stranger, a dangerous, cunning stranger. And if we fail this arbitrary test, she asked, her voice dangerously low, then your vineyard is landlocked, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady. It echoed in the room. You have the original 100 acres, mortgaged to the hilt. The future growth, the best soil, the water reserves, that's mine. You bitch, she hissed, the mask finally completely off. You pathetic, jealous bitch. You couldn't stand that he left it to me, that I was the one who mattered. You were just the wife, the decoration. He knew you weren't strong enough to run anything. Each word was meant to eviscerate, but they bounced off the armor of truth Jonathan had helped me forge. I reached into my purse and pulled out the faded photograph. I slid it across the table to her. That's who we were, I said. That's what we built. Not a brand, not equity, a life. From the dirt up. You inherited a company. He left me the soul of it. And you've spent 5 months proving you don't have one. She looked at the photo of her young, muddy, radiant parents, then threw it away as if burned. It fluttered to the floor. The meeting dissolved into legal threats and shouts. Eleanor Vance remained an immovable rock, citing clauses and precedents. The independent panel would begin its review immediately. Their decision would be final. In the end, Chloe and Adrian stormed out, promising litigation, screaming about contesting the will until their last dollar. I knew from the cold dread in Adrian's eyes that they didn't have many dollars left that weren't borrowed. Eleanor helped me to my feet. It's done, Eliza. The performance is over. I took the bus back to the valley. I didn't go to the garage apartment. I walked straight to the western hillside, to my Zinfandel cutting. I knelt in the dirt, the same dirt from the photograph, and I cried. I cried for the daughter I'd lost, for the husband I missed so desperately it was a physical ache, for the woman I'd been who had endured so much. I cried until the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of grape and gold. Then I wiped my face, I stood up, I looked at the brave green leaves of my vine, then down at the vineyard below. Lights were coming on in the winery. It was no longer my home, but the land under my feet, the wide, silent, hopeful land, was mine. The panel's review took a month. They interviewed everyone, pored over every book, examined every decision. Their conclusion was swift and unanimous. Management had been focused on short-term financial leverage at the expense of long-term sustainability,
community, and the foundational values of the estate. The loan for the sparkling venture, taken against the historic property, was the final damning evidence. Chloe and Adrian were denied the lease. They contested the will, of course. The legal battle was long, ugly, and expensive for them. My position, thanks to Jonathan's meticulous planning and Eleanor's skill, was unassailable. A year after that first meeting in San Francisco, it was finally, truly, over. I sold a small 10-acre parcel of my trust land to a conservation group, ensuring it would never be developed. The money gave me financial independence for life. I paid off Miguel's mortgage, I established a scholarship in Jonathan's name for children of vineyard workers. I did not keep the main house. It held too many ghosts, too much poisoned air. I built a small modern farmhouse on the western hillside. With a wall of windows facing the sun and the rows of vines I began to plant. Not sterling vineyards, sterling roots. A tiny premium label, focusing on heritage clones, like my first Zinfandel. I hired back some of the old crew. The work is hard, my hands are dirty, and I am happier than I have been in decades. On my 75th birthday, I hosted a small gathering at Sterling Roots. A few friends, some of the team. As the sun set, I walked alone to the now strong Zinfandel vine, heavy with promising fruit. I touched a leaf, thinking of the key, the box, the letter, the photograph. The greatest humiliation was the preparation for my greatest bloom. It took losing everything to find I had already had everything within me. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, I'd love to hear your own experiences in the comments below. You are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories of quiet strength and second chances, subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next one.